The hypercar iceberg runs very deep. Above the water, we have companies like Pagani, Bugatti, Koenigsegg. In my opinion, those are the big three right now. A bit below that, we have companies like Spyker, which you may know for the C8, but even that being pretty niche is still nowhere near what I'm going to show you in this video. Despite the downfall of brands like Ferrari, Jaguar, Lotus that we're seeing in real time, and the electrification and neutering of the car industry as a whole, there are a handful of companies emerging that are putting out innovative driver's cars with original design and, most importantly, big, loud gas engines. So in light of all the controversy around the new Luce, I'm going to give you a breath of fresh air today and show you 7 hypercars that you didn't know existed. These are the cars that all the kids playing Roblox and yelling 6-7 are gonna have posters of on their wall, and by the end of this video, you'll see why the future of the hypercar world is actually pretty promising. I guarantee you'll learn something new, so when you do, make sure to subscribe and comment what you learned. In no particular order, first up, we have the Praga Bohema. I had never heard of the Praga Bohema before until a couple of weeks ago when I saw one at a local car meet of mine. Literally like 1 minute down the street. I vlogged the whole thing. I did a whole in-depth review video of it as well on my Instagram, so check that out. And I've been chatting with the owner, so maybe he'll let me film an actual full in-depth review. He actually has the only Praga Bohema in the whole of USA, and it's right near me. Super cool. Now, before we get into the Bohema, what is Praga? Well, the name Praga is a translation of the word Prague, which is the capital city of the Czech Republic, which is where this car is from. They began all the way back in 1907 making cars and farm equipment, and they had great initial success. In the 20s, they ramped up production and started making motorcycles and trucks alongside their cars and agricultural machines. And as if they weren't diversified enough by this point, in the 1930s, they began making buses and even planes. Everything was great for Praga. They were dominating in many industries until World War II happened. By the Second World War, Praga was already really experienced making trucks and tanks, so their expert engineers and employees were forced to make trucks and military equipment exclusively. During the war, Praga lost almost all their production facilities and stopped making cars entirely. And for the next 30 years, Praga was reduced to making just trucks like the V3S, despite being a dominant car manufacturer in the past. When all hope seemed lost, in the 1990s, Praga finally decided to venture away from just making trucks, and they dropped an enduro motorcycle. They would go on to dip their toes in the world of motorsport, with Phil Converse coming second in the 1999 USA Motorcycle Cross Country Series on his Praga ED250. Now, not every company is going to have such a long and rich history on this list like Praga, but I'm actually only just scratching the surface of the whole Praga history, which is crazy. Now, finally, for the first time since 1947, Praga releases a road car, and it did not disappoint. The R1R was somehow road legal despite looking like a race car. They only made 68 of them, and it weighed an insane 1,477 pounds and made 390 horsepower. That is a strong power figure given how light it is, and that power comes from a turbo 4-cylinder made by Renault. To this day, Praga is still producing the R1, which is a track-only version of the R1R, but they are also currently producing the Praga Bohema. This is their current flagship car, and like the R1R, I have no idea how it's street legal looking like that. The Bohema is actually pretty new. It only came out 2 years ago in 2024, and here are the technical specifications. I made a spreadsheet for every car's tech specs, so I'm just going to rapid fire them off for each one. So if you were to buy a Praga Bohema, it would depend on how you spec it, but it would start at about $1.5 million. There's only 89 units made, and it has a 3.8 liter twin turbo V6, which funny enough is actually the motor from the Nissan GTR, the R35. Pretty interesting that it uses that powertrain, and the V6 is actually the smallest by far on this list, but it is not shy on performance because it is the lightest on the list at 2,165 pounds at 700 horsepower. This makes it so that it has a 0 to 60 of 2.3 seconds and a top speed of 197 miles an hour. And one cool feature is that it has no dashboard with a pretty sick steering wheel. All right, next up, we have the Delage D12. Now, I also probably never would have heard of this car if I didn't accidentally see it in person. But one day when I was at Bugatti Broward, because I saw they had a Hennessy, I went to go check it out because that was actually the first one of those I would have seen. And this thing was sitting there. I had no idea what it was, and there was just a dude kind of sitting in it and walking around it. And I asked, and he was actually the CEO of the company Delage. And I had never heard of them before in my life. I'm like, yo, you got to tell me about this. But also, hey, I film videos. Do you want to do an interview and just tell me all about it? So it was really cool meeting the CEO of a young hypercar company, and he told me all about it. All those videos are on my Instagram. Go check them out. But let's get into the Delage D12. Unlike other companies on this list, Delage actually also has a really long and rich history. It starts all the way back in 1905 in France, with a man by the name Louis Delage. He was a steam train operator right around the time that cars were first becoming a thing. I think this is so cool. It's said that races started to break out against cars and his trains, and that really intrigued him to get into the car world. So he did, and after working for Renault and Peugeot for a couple of years, he decided, I want to start my own company. His first cars were somehow considered fast at only 9 horsepower, and all in all, he did have a really successful start. Louis Delage really quickly learned the advertising value that racing could have. And as early as 1908, he would go on to win the Coupe de Voiture. I don't know how to pronounce that. Then came victories at Le Mans and Indianapolis 500, won even before World War I. Followed in 1927 by the World Grand Prix Championship title. In 1929, Louis dropped one of the hardest cars I've seen in my life, the D8. The D8 was like the Rolls Royce of that time. Although Rolls Royce was making cars at the time, I think the D8 is way cooler. In the late 1930s, they continued making luxury land yachts with the D6, but let's take a look at the racing history of Delage. One of Louis' first racing successes was in 1914 at the Indy 500, and while there would be much more success in the racing world to come, there was also a heated rivalry brewing. In the 1925 French Grand Prix, Delage took first and second place with their 2LCV, which is a pretty dope car, but there was also a pretty dope car called the T35, which came in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th place in that race. And the T35 was created by a little fella named Ettore Bugatti. This would go on to be the start of a heated rivalry between Bugatti and Delage, and let's just say only one of them is making the niche car tier list, so yeah, Bugatti definitely won in the long run, but it's okay, Delage is coming back. Delage would go on to dominate in the French Grand Prix, Constructors' Championships, and win world titles with their 15S8. And as I was researching, it was quite interesting. 2 of the drivers for Delage really caught my eye. Albert Devo and Louis Chiron. Pretty interesting names that might ring a bell because even though they were drivers for Delage back in the day, they actually both got Bugattis named after them. I'd love to dive more into that cool history, but long story short, similar to Praga, Delage seized all automotive production in 1953 following the devastating effects of World War II and would remain dead for another 66 years until a man named Laurent Tapier would come and revive the brand. I'm here with the founder and CEO of Delage. And this is the
refounder.
Refounder.
The founder was Louis Delage in 1905.
Okay.
I cannot say that I'm the founder.
Refounder. Okay. Laurent Tapier is actually the man that I got to meet. He is the refounder and CEO of Delage. He actually dropped some really crazy advice on me that I'm going to share at the end. Now, he wanted to revive the brand in terms of the namesake, but they are not what they used to be. Very similar to Praga's reset, they sort of just popped up on the scene out of nowhere with a race car looking road car. Now, let's get into some of the tech specs for the D12. If you were to buy one, you better be ready to fork over a whopping $2.4 million, depending on how you spec it, and they're limited to just 30 units. It makes 1,000 horsepower from a hybrid 7.6 liter V12 that's actually made in-house. Curious on the reliability of that on a fresh company kind of just making a hybrid V12. But one of the main things as I was speaking to Laurent that he wanted to do with this car is have natural aspiration and get the noise of a V12 behind you, which I think is amazing.
I'm a fan of V12 and I wanted it to be naturally aspirated for the beauty of the sound.
It only weighs 3,086 pounds, which makes it 0 to 60 2.4 seconds with a top speed of 224 miles an hour. Some cool features, as you can see, it has a cockpit style tandem seating position, so the top opens like this, there's no doors, and the D12 is actually the only car in existence with the rights and patents to use contractive suspension, which has become standard tech in F1.
You have the contractive suspension that only exists in Formula One. We have the exclusive rights to use the patent on a street legal car. You have a triple flow of cooling for the brakes, plus full carbon fiber wheels that produce a fan effect to extract the heat from the brakes at every acceleration.
Wow.
Yeah, the car is a two-seater, but in a tandem position, one behind the other, because we wanted to have central spread of masses.
Are we going to see more of these on the street in America?
I don't know, it will depend. I have 2 other orders in America, but I don't know if the clients will want to use it outside or not. To be honest, most of the time for cars that worth 2 million euros, $2.3 million, most of the people, they don't like to go out with it because it's too precious. The real place where it belongs is the track, because on track it can destroy anything that is street legal.
Yeah. Well, thank you for telling me about it.
You're very welcome.
All right, next up is the Naran. All right, bro, I need like a sponsor for better production value. The next car is the Naran Hypercar. I actually love this company, and it doesn't have some crazy long backstory like the previous two, but I've actually been following the founder of this company on Instagram, and he makes really cool videos. Amir Naran was born and raised in Zimbabwe and was fascinated with cars from a young age. He found great success as the founder and CEO of Vimana Private Jets, and what better to do when you make a lot of money than just create your own hypercar. He's been putting out great videos on Instagram lately that I actually take a lot of inspiration from, just talking about business and life and how you should carry yourself. Amir Naran started Naran Automotive just a few years ago in 2020, and while they haven't started delivering and producing for customers yet, they do have a fully built show car that's been floating around some events, so I'm counting it on this list because it seems promising. Now, before I get into the tech specs of the Naran Hypercar, I want to see if you can guess what it's based on. If you were to take a look at this little car right here and tell me what you think the chassis and motor are based on, do you have any guesses? And no, it is not the new Prius. Keep in mind, one of the main selling points for this car is that it's a 4-seater hypercar. Does that give you any sort of guess? Take a look at the silhouette. Okay, you probably have no idea. One big hint is that it actually uses the S63, which is a BMW engine from the M8. Yes, this car is actually based on a BMW M8. So for all the BMW fanboys that say they don't make hypercars or anything, or supercars, which they don't, which actually I'm one of them, I'm like, bro, they should make one. Well, here you go. This is a bored out motor making way more power from an M8 chassis, and it looks like a hypercar. Pretty sick. So this company operates out of England, and if you were interested in getting a Hypercar, it would run you about $2.3 million. I'd be interested to see what specs come out, because I know Amir Naran really put a lot of thought into the design, making a very usable hypercar and using materials that aren't just like carbon, Alcantara that every other company is using like really quality materials.
A childhood dream of mine was to build my own hypercar. Today I'm in a lucky position where I'm making that happen. It's called the Naran. Weight is very important in a car. Many manufacturers compromise on interior materials and design in order to keep the car light to perform better. We're not compromising that aspect. We're using materials like stones, woods on the interior. We skive the material down so thin so that it doesn't add much weight, and veneer it in a way so that it feels solid.
It'll be limited to just 39 units, so it'll be hard to get your hands on. It makes 1,084 horsepower from a 5-liter twin-turbo V8, coming in at 3,500 pounds, brings it 0 to 60 to 2.3 seconds, right on par with everything else on the list. Top speed of 230 miles per hour, and the cool feature is that it is a 4-seater. Pretty sick. The fourth car on this list is a very heavy hitter. We have the Apollo IE. Like Praga and Delage, the Apollo brand had its ups and downs over the years, but unlike Praga and Delage, they did not get to keep the name. They weren't always called Apollo. First, they were called Gumpert. In 2004, a German engineer by the name of Roland Gumpert set out to create a record-breaking hypercar that was legal for the road. Now, Gumpert may sound like some weird random name, but this was not some random weirdo at all.
And then there's the problem of the name. Does it have one of those sexy ones, like all the sexiest cars have? You know, Vanquish, Viper, Raptor? No, it's called a Gumpert.
He was the director of Audi Sport and was a crucial part in developing the legendary Quattro system. And if you know anything about Audi, you know they'd go on to have their Quattro all-wheel drive system carry them to multiple World Rally Championship titles. Officially named Gumpert Sportwagen Manufaktur, they dropped one of the most legendary cars, the Gumpert Apollo. The Apollo became famous for being the fastest car around the Top Gear test track for 2 years straight and setting lap records as the fastest production car at the Nürburgring. This all seems great, but every comeback story needs a downfall, and in 2012, Gumpert Sportwagen Auto Manufaktur would go bankrupt and unveil one of the most ridiculously named cars ever, the Gumpert Explosion. To no one's surprise, the Explosion was a failure and never made it into production. Then Gumpert unveiled the Tornante, which would put the nail in the coffin because it also never made it into production, and 4 years of failed concepts later, in 2016, a Chinese company bought out Gumpert and rebranded the company as Apollo. So at this point, Gumpert has nothing to do with the Apollo brand anymore, but their first concepts unveil and start to look really promising. First and most realistic was the Apollo N, which was just a crazier version of the Apollo, and this thing looks so peak, but they only made 3 of them, and because it wasn't technically even a new car for them, it continued the chain of failed concept cars. And finally, after so many failed concepts, we arrive at the Apollo Aero, which is number 4 on this list. Wait, yeah. That was another failed concept. They finally got one right with the Apollo IE. This is the Apollo Intensa Emoción. And just to clarify, it had a successful production run of 10 bespoke units from 2019 to 2020. And while Apollo is currently making the Evo, which is a crazier track-only version, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to discuss the IE. Now, before we discuss the IE, I just have to mention this super weird side note, as if all these brand and name changes weren't confusing enough already. Around the same time as the IE, Roland Gumpert was developing a car of his own. Now, this is some very, very niche car knowledge, but Gumpert is actually still active today, making an electric hydrogen supercar thing called the Natalie. Not really sure what's up with that, but it does look pretty sick. Anyway, here are the tech specs for the IE. Now, most expensive on this list yet so far, it's going to run you about $4 million if you want an IE. That's because there was only 10 of them and they're all bespoke and very custom in their own way. The powertrain is a 6.3 liter V12. It weighs 2,755 pounds, making 780 horsepower. 0 to 60 time of 2.7 seconds, top speed of 208 miles per hour. And the cool feature with these cars is that each one got a corresponding name. So there's the Orange Dragon, Golden Dragon, Purple Dragon, Carbon Dragon, Black Dragon, Samurai Dragon, Ocean Dragon. These cars look absolutely insane. By far one of the most crazy looking ones on this list. But yeah, the interesting thing they do is that they each have their own name corresponding with the color. Alright, pretty sick car, but this one was German. We had French, Czech Republic. Finally, we have an American car. This is the SSC Tuatara. SSC North America, or as I like to call them, Social Security Card North America, is a very simple backstory with a man you've never heard of by the name Shelby. No, seriously, you've never heard of him. His name is Jared Shelby and has zero correlation to Carroll Shelby. Even though he mogs Carroll and is the more jacked of the two Shelbys, he did have to quickly change his name from Shelby Supercars to SSC to avoid any confusion. His first creation was way back in 2004 with a car you may be familiar with, the Ultimate Aero. Pretty sick name, but kind of an ugly design in my opinion. But for essentially a random engineer building a car from scratch, this thing is amazing. Like, bro, it literally has butterfly doors. And in typical American fashion, it had a big supercharged LS V8. And in general, the Ultimate Aero was a huge success, but Shelby wanted much more. So Jared Shelby set out with one goal in mind. Screw your McLaren, screw your Bugatti, America will not lose out to some European sissy. So there he was in 2007, standing before his Ultimate Aero. He looked at his creation intensely. He mustered up all his focus. He put on his meta glasses and he said, "Computer, delete supercharger and initiate twin turbo protocol. And thus, the Ultimate Aero TT was born. Now, I just have to say this because this is one of the funniest things I have ever heard. The very first SSC Ultimate Aero TT sold for a very respectable $451,000, but it was on eBay. Of all places, a brand new hypercar sold on eBay. That is hilarious. This was the car that would put SSC on the map because it stole the title of world's fastest production car from the Bugatti Veyron with a top speed of 256 miles per hour. Now, I have a 2005 Cadillac CTS-V, which has the LS6, which is a 5.7 liter. What Shelby did was take the LS6, bore it out to 6.2 liters, and of course put 2 turbos on it. And after everything was said and done, it made over 1,100 horsepower, but pretty sick. I have the same motor. Jared's creation would go on to hold the record for 3 years before losing out to the Veyron again, but he had achieved his goal. He could sleep peacefully at night, and production of all Ultimate Aeros ended in 2015. Jared Shelby would take a few years to hit the drawing board because Bugatti was already dropping record-breaking cars again with the Chiron, and he was not going to let that slide. And in 2020, Social Security Card North America put themselves back on the map by dropping the Tuatara. With history repeating itself, SSC would go on to beat Bugatti once again with a top speed of 282 miles per hour, which, wait, hold on. All these crazy records, but you never see Tuataras. You don't really hear talks about SSC. That's exactly why it's on the niche car tier list. Subscribe if you learned something new so far, and if you learn anything, put it in the comments what interests you and what you think about these companies. Why are they niche? I mean, it's out here beating Bugatti. Again, he beat the Chiron, which is pretty cool, and they held the record for a good amount of time, but he would go on to lose to later Chiron variations and things like the Koenigsegg Jesko, but here are the tech specs of the Tuatara. So if you want one, it's actually not too bad to get into. It's only $1.6 million. They're only making 110 units. Power is from a 5.9 liter twin turbo V8. It weighs 2,750 pounds and makes a whopping 1,750 horsepower. 0 to 60 is 2.5 seconds with a top speed of 282 miles per hour.
Pretty cool. Sunday afternoon drive.
All right. Hypercar number 6 is the Zenvo Aurora. Now, Zenvo is a relatively young company from Denmark, releasing their first car, the ST1, in 2008. Very much unlike SSC, Zenvo did not set out to break some crazy record. They just wanted to make a cool, new, unique hypercar, pioneer some new technology, and most importantly, put Denmark on the map, but they did end up on the niche car tier list, so don't really know how well that worked for them. Now, I have no idea what they're putting in the Danish water over there, but they love boost. I don't know what it is, but every Zenvo has some weird configuration of forced induction. Their first car, the ST1, stands for Supercharged Turbocharged 1, which, yes, it was an 1,100 horsepower 6.8 liter V8 that was twin charged. Zenvo continued their unique forced induction engines in 2016 when they released the successor to the ST1, the TS1, which stood for Twin Supercharged 1. So we went from twin charged to twin supercharged. What's next? A quad turbo V12? It's right behind me, isn't it? Yeah, their Aurora does have that, but we'll get into that in a sec because I have to talk about the TSR. If you're like me, the only reason you know what Zenvo is because of Shmee. So the Zenvo TSRS was actually the very first hypercar that Shmee ever got. It was this crazy purple spec with green accents, but what made it stand out and so memorable to me was the active aero spoiler. Zenvo calls it the active multi-axis centripetal wing. Under braking, it creates additional drag and acts as an air brake, and while cornering, it distributes downforce that boosts inner tire grip. The lateral angle of attack can change by up to 20 degrees, giving the unique and patented centripetal wing a significant advantage over other cars on the road. The TSRS was from 2018, and like I said, there was no crazy records broken over the years, just some cool cars made, and their latest creation is the Zenvo Aurora. And while it's technically not officially out yet, they've had fully built display cars floating around at a few car events the last few years, and it even ran at Goodwood, so it seems pretty promising. Here are the tech specs. Now to get into the Aurora, you're first going to decide if you want to get one of two versions. They have the Agile and the Tour. Now I think it's pretty sick that they're kind of released together in these two distinct colors. The Agile is the high downforce one and the Tour is more of like a touring version. So the Agile has 1450 horsepower while the Tour has 1850 horsepower, and that power comes from a hybrid 6.6 liter quad turbo V12. They're only making 50 each of these. They weigh 3,197 pounds roughly. 0 to 60 2.3 seconds and a top speed of 280 miles per hour. And one cool feature that it has is that it has rotating gauges on the gauge cluster, so you can choose if you want it to display a physical gauge, or you can flip it around and put your Apple Maps or music on there. Alright, the seventh and final, and perhaps one of the nichest cars on this list, we have the Capricorn 01 Zagato. As the name suggests, this is a joint venture between Capricorn and Zagato. And if you're like me, you've never heard of Capricorn in your life, but you're very familiar with Zagato. If you don't know Zagato, they're an Italian coach building company that has been designing insane cars since 1919. Now, Capricorn is a German company which has been supplying carbon fiber and race car components to brands like Porsche, Bugatti, McLaren, and also Formula One. And they've been doing this since 1933, so although I didn't know them before, it's pretty safe to say they know what they're doing. Some of the previous cars I talked about broke crazy records, some had long histories of going up and down, some failed, restarted. Some companies like Zenvo just wanted to make a cool car, but the way that Capricorn Zagato started is actually comedic. One random day, the CEO of Capricorn was chilling and he just called up the president of Zagato and said,
"Andrea, I have an idea. Shall we do a car together?" He said, "Yes." I said, "No, it's not so easy, Andrea. I want to do a hypercar." And he said, "What? A hypercar? You have not done one. We need to do one. So why not do together?" And so the story started. Yeah.
I think that is hilarious how they acted like they were just casually going to hang out. Like, "Hey, do you want to start a hypercar brand?" And Zagato was just like, "Yeah, I'm down." Like, bro, I think the fact that they were so nonchalant about it speaks to just how confident and experienced they are. By the way, that YouTube clip is exactly why I'm making this video. It had a whopping 715 views in 6 months. The channel only had 77 subscribers. That's the official Capricorn account. I have over 2,500 subscribers and I'm just a dude on YouTube. Like, I'm not out here creating race car parts for 90 plus years and making my own hypercar. Just goes to show how much clout in marketing really makes a brand, because there's no difference really between any of these brands. They're all from different countries. They all started in different ways. No one is really better than the other. It's just marketing. The way that Bugatti, Koenigsegg, Pagani got to the top is really just marketing and clout. Anyway, let's get into the juicy tech specs of the Capricorn 01 Zagato. It debuted last year and things are moving along swiftly with their first customers scheduled to take delivery by the end of this year. So it's tough to say whether this is an Italian car or a German car or whether it started back in 1919 or 2025, but it's called the 01, and if you want one, it's going to cost you $3.5 million. They're only making 19 of them. It has a 5.2 liter supercharged V8 making 900 horsepower, but only weighs 2,645 pounds, giving it a 0 to 60 time of 2.9 seconds and a top speed of 224 miles per hour. And one cool feature about this car is that it's actually the only one on this list with a manual transmission. Now, you're probably looking at all these and thinking, where's Zinger? Where's this car? Where's that car? Let me go over some honorable mentions and why I didn't put them on this list. First honorable mention is Zinger, which I did fully prepare to have in this video. Some other honorable mentions, Spiker actually is rushing out a successor to the C8. It's going to debut at Pebble Beach in a couple months, which I'm really looking forward to. The Red Bull RB17, pretty niche. It's not out yet and it's track only. The KTM X-Bow, it's pretty cheap and a lot slower than all these cars, but it does have the looks going for it, which is pretty cool. The McMurtry Spearling or Sterling, I forget, that thing is fully electric. I didn't put any electric cars on this list, and I mean, that thing is sick. I actually love McMurtry, but I think it's a one-seater and it's too weird. Karma is actually developing a hypercar, but come on. don't care, it's electric. Pininfarina, pretty sick cars, but also electric. The Camaro 39, which just dropped with the Koenigsegg powertrain, pretty sick. It has all the makings to be a hypercar except the looks, which it's not even meant to look like a hypercar, so it's not on this list. Glickenhaus is actually too niche even for this list. Y'all weren't ready for that. Companies like Hennessy, they're pretty niche, but I think they're too known. That might just be bias, I don't know. And then you have the Rezvani Beast, which is another outlier. It's only like 600K. Doesn't really fit into this list. And then last thing I want to talk about, like I mentioned at the start, if you remember, the Delage CEO that I met actually told me something crazy that I want to say now. I feel like I could make my own hypercar if you just have enough money, hire the right people. You can kind of just slap your name on it and make something cool. I've always had that aspiration. I'm going to go over some things that I might do if I were to make a hypercar. I could partner with Rob Dahm and make a new chassis, like something that's never been done before, and you know, put our names on it, but be powered by a rotary engine powertrain, bro. That would be pretty sick. That's one idea I have. Another idea I want to do is partner with Craig Hill and or Paul Coxage. I don't know like if this would ever be possible, but Craig Hill, they make like really ergonomically and thought out to be like the most precise and practical, simple, but like effective tools for everyday use. Like they take a pair of scissors and just think, how can we make this as good as possible in a simple way? Every little detail of everything they design is thoughtful, which I think if they were to like help me design car components, it would be sick. And then Paul Coxage, he's just like an artist, but the way he thinks is just so cool. Like again, just the way they would see an object and its function and think like, how could I just make that cool and unique and like perfected in how it functions? I think that would be sick to work on a car with them. Another idea I've had is have like 100% dark tint all around. Like I guess it would be 0% tint all around, like genuinely not see-through. And the appeal would be that you can't drive it at all, but at night you could turn off all the lights and have infrared like lights on the outside of the car that put out like infrared light, and then you have some special like glasses system or like maybe just on the windshield, if I could figure that out, to where you can see perfectly, but you're like a night stealth rider, bro, like fully blacked out, no taillights, no headlights, but you can see like perfectly. I think that would be sick, but I gotta figure out how infrared works. So anyway, I was talking with the CEO of Delage one day. Pretty cool. We talked for honestly a couple hours. It was pretty sick, cool experience, and I was asking him, what's it like running a hypercar company? What is your car, this and that, what goes into it? And he gave me a lot of insights on the financials and everything, and I told him everything I just said. I was like, yo, I've always thought it's kind of easy to like, you know, in theory, get into like making your own hypercar. But he said to my face, he grabbed my shoulder, he said, my advice to you, do not do it. I was like, bro, what? I told him, I was like, you know what? I love what you do. I think I could do it one day. And he was like, don't do it. I was like, oh, okay. I already have my first hater, my first person to prove wrong. I look forward to it. Definitely a possibility because I plan to make a lot of money in life. So if I have a lot of money, I might make my own car to compete with these. I guarantee you learned something new. Thank you for watching to the very end. Please subscribe, comment below if I missed anything or something interesting you want to talk about. And follow my Instagram. I post very in-depth, original, authentic, funny reviews of cars like the Praga Bohema and the Delage D12. This is a car that's the only one in America. Like, the videos that I put out, I feel like they're slept on. I do put a lot of thought and effort into researching the history of a company, going out of my way to find a very unique, rare hypercar, and then putting together a quality video of it. So if you're interested in hypercars like these, check out my Instagram for sure. And you very well may see one day in like 20 years me release my own hypercar, so stay tuned for that.